All right, so another comparison of the comic compared to the novel, what you missed, what some things that might be further explained in the novel that you might not get. So once again, there's no spoiler-free, no spoilers in this chapter. Just kind of going through a few of the chapters and giving you some of the comparisons. Well, with that being said, let's just get straight into it. So in this particular scene, what they leave out is while Arthur is following Veray, she immediately stops, and then Arthur ends up bumping the booty, and she gets flustered, and then they continue on with their path to get back to the council. So that's one of the things that they had left out. Now, in this particular scene, they don't have the guard there at the door. And we also find out in the novel, too, during this scene, is that they have code names. Veray is Lance Zero, and Ulford is Lance Borod. So that's one thing they left out. Now, this part, I don't really know why they switched up who said this. Maybe they were just trying to make, Blaine later seem like he was more involved than he was. But this particular scene, we must consider the Graysunders' view as well. They're thinking not only for themselves, but objectively for the entire continent. Blaine never says this. Priscilla, his wife, is the one that says this. Blaine doesn't even talk during this entire interaction. So that was something they had switched up.
Now, I really like this Arthur, I don't give two fucks face. It kind of just got me laughing.
No, I really like the way they depicted the anger and the frustration that Aldwin had with Dawson and all the things that he was doing. And so this is just like really cool the way they had it drew. Like, he was, Aldwin was pissed. He was pissed about the way that they was treating Arthur. And I just thought this was really cool. Now, when they was trying to take Arthur back, man, I liked Aldwin when he kind of, put his hand down. He was like, Aya? So, he put his balls on the table pretty much. And then Dawson came in there like, you got rid of one of your, you could even keep one of your lances safe. And, you only have one lance and all this other shit, right? And I don't know, man, like, Aya was there. The only person that he had there was Aldwin. And, okay, spoiler. This will be a little bit of a spoiler right here. So if you don't want to hear the part, you can just kind of skip past it. But Aldwin, if he had Aya there, he was like, they're not going to just run this whole thing. And they got into like some sort of scuffle. Micah isn't there. It's only Veray, and it is, Byron's there too. So Byron's there, Veray's there, and Ulford is there. I mean, Aya is the second strongest lance. And so, I mean, if she really needed to take out Ulford, then she could have done that. So, I mean, if he really wanted to go through with it, Owen could have, had Aya come up in there and, let him know what's what. But he didn't do that. So, I don't know. I thought it was cool that he was willing to, but then he kind of thought about it. He was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. And also, too, it's not his fault that, what's the one lance name? It's not his fault that she ended up dying. Like, she was doing her job, investigating the beast glades and the tunnels and shit, and she just happened to get, picked apart. That's just kind of what it was. Like, I mean, it wasn't nothing he could do about it. It's not like he could stop it from happening or he's strong enough to protect her or some shit like that. Like, it's a Lance. Lance got killed. Instead of trying to blame him, they should be like, who the fuck is strong enough to kill a Lance, and what should we be worried about? But I guess it kind of makes sense because later on we kind of know why they're acting like this why they're all acting like this in the first place. Now, the conversation with Director Goodsky, all this stuff is really consistent with how it happened in the novel. I guess just one thing I'll add is that at the end of this whole conversation, Arthur thinks about, is there a way to maybe escape, get themselves out of this situation? And ultimately he says that it's impossible to happen. And so he just falls asleep. And that's how that ends. Now, the conversation with Dawson and Blaine, this all happened pretty succinctly with the novel. The one thing that they give you a little bit more context in the novel is that when Blaine's talking about his, the reason why he's doing this stuff. He talks about how when he was young, how he didn't have any magical talent. He had to take all these elixirs and all this stuff to barely break into the white stage. And how, he had this inferiority complex because he was talentless. And he looked at his children and his wife. He was envious of them and their talent. And then he also talks about how, having the lances didn't do anything to help his inferiority complex. It actually made it worse because it served as a reminder of him needing protection and how he couldn't just take care of himself and that he was weak. This scene where he talks about how, he saw that his father was corrupted and he swore he wasn't going to be like him, that never happened in the novel. So one of the things I didn't like during this scene, because they kind of, the way that they structured the scene, it kind of came off as if Blaine, he wasn't really sure what his motivations were. He was going back and forth. He didn't really know, why he was doing what he was doing. Is he greedy for power? Is he just using it as an excuse? And he's just trying to protect his family? So it kind of gives you the feeling that he's kind of indecisive as to why he's doing this and what he's doing or whatever. But in the novel, it's pretty clear that Blaine is power hungry. He has that inferiority complex, and he wants to have power, and he wants to be respected. And he talks about how, how it would be like to be feared and be respected by his people and whatnot. And so he cares about his family. He wants to protect his family, but when it comes to the actual people of that character, he doesn't care about them at all. He doesn't give two shits. He wants to be powerful and wants to be respected and doesn't want to be viewed as weak. And so he's willing to do all this shit just to potentially get that power. Another part that they left out during the end of this, when he talks about how, Arthur's death is going to be for the greater good, is that Blaine was saying that how he was envious of Arthur, how Arthur didn't deserve all his power and his talent, and that actually he deserved that power and that talent. And how he said Arthur had oceans amounts of potential, and he thought that all should have been given to him. So this is all just envy and jealousy of Arthur. And he thinks that by Arthur's death, by Arthur dying, that would end up, solving or ending his enviousness of Arthur. And that he'll stop and he'll be done, and, he can just wash away, his feelings that he have about Arthur. So my opinion about all this shit, man, is that we know that Dawson is a traitor, and his wife is also a traitor. We know that Blaine is a traitor, and that his wife Priscilla is also a traitor. And so, what is the punishment for treason? Death. Death by guillotine. So all four of them, should have their heads chopped off. Because they betrayed their entire country, their entire nation. They betrayed them by going along with this conspiracy to turn everything over to him. And so they need to be killed for this. 100%. 100%. They're traitors. And so I don't have any sort of mercy or sympathy towards Blaine and Priscilla or anything no. They contributed with this. They gone along right with this shit. They know it's wrong. They're doing it anyway for their own selfish greed. And so they need to have their heads chopped off. And that's just what it is. The only thing they changed about this scene with this dream that Arthur's having is that he was following these crows, and he saw that the crows were eating something, and so he wanted to see what they were eating. And so he climbs up higher and higher and higher, and he sees the crows eating the decapitated heads of his loved ones, the ones that he cares about. And he actually goes up and grabs the heads, and they scream at him that it's your fault. And so that's how it actually happened in the novel. And then he wakes up from the dream. Now the scene when Aya comes in and gives the letter to Arthur, all this stuff goes by pretty normally. The only thing that they didn't include in the letter was that in the letter, Aldwin says that Cynthia Goodsky is actually going to get public execution, and that was the only thing that they kind of left out. But he said that he's going to protect his family and yada yada yada. That's all he can really do. And then Arthur says after this letter, he says to himself that he feels a big, burden being lifted off of him now that he knows that his family is safe. So obviously his family safety was worrying him, and so now he feels good because he knows that, they're going to keep his family safe. And then after that, genius Arthur decides to try to figure out, okay, who's all behind all this? What's the motivations? And he kind of figures out that that they're being manipulated and there's some sort of conspiracy against them, and there's some third party at play, and that the future is involved. And so Arthur already kind of figures all this out because he's a genius. Now, this whole scene between Byron and Arthur, right, man? Like, Arthur, he's on his shit, man. He's just talking this shit about what happened with Lucas. And they said basically the same thing in the comic, except that the way that it was worded in the novel was just so clean, so much better. Like, I could just see the smirk on his face where he's just saying all this shit, just like all nonchalant.
You think this only affects you? I'll make sure your family and anyone you even remotely care about faces a miserable death, he said, spittle flying into my face. Yes, the great Lance Byron is going to take vengeance for his lunatic younger brother, who chose to go to the dark side and kill innocent students by tormenting the teenager who put him out of his misery and killing his family too. All hail Lance Byron.
This part just kind of depicts that Arthur would have reacted differently if it was somebody else who showed him his bond, that he's no longer going to have his bond. But because it was Aldwin, he decided to keep his composure and just nod and go along with it. So just showing that, if it was somebody else, he probably would have been pissed and reacted differently. One thing they didn't show was that Byron was actually pissed. He was pissed off that Arthur wasn't going to get killed or executed or anything like that. And Arthur could tell. And he didn't want to antagonize Byron anymore, so he just kind of kept quiet while he went back to his cell. So Arthur knows, how far to go with things and, when to hold back. That's what it kind of shows to me. So this dialogue didn't actually happen in the novel. Basically, Arthur just went back to his cell. He was talking about, his cell and stuff, and in his head he was. And then, Winsome just showed up. But I like the fact that they added it in there because Arthur was expecting for him to show up, and I guess him talking to himself, but not really talking to himself. He was talking to Winsome because he was there the entire time about, the comparison between the cell and how it was in that white room that he was in at first when you first met him. Well, I guess it's not when you first met him. When we first officially met him, his actual physical body and stuff like that. It was a good thing they added on to let you know that he was aware of Winsome's presence and that he was expecting him. So I thought it was cool. And this scene was also really dope because the mighty Winsome who shows up, and he's got Sylvie in his hand, in his arm, and just like, I'm here. And you're kind of wondering like, oh shit, like he showed up. What the hell's about to happen next? And we're gonna find out what's gonna happen next. It's gonna be pretty tragic. Well, that's gonna do it for this video. I'll continue with more chapters. I'm trying to get these out pretty frequently so I can catch up with the the main story. But yeah, let me know if you liked it. Always give me a like so the video can get shared some more. And give me your comments if you have any thoughts about it, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.